Let's be clear about something. The Sinaloa Cartel isn't just some gang. It's a brutal, multi-billion-dollar corporation. Today, we're going to go inside their entire business model, from the poppy fields all the way to the streets, using first-hand accounts to show you the complete life cycle of their deadly product. And it all starts with a simple, yet totally impossible choice. Take it from Manuel, a poppy farmer. For him, and for thousands of people just like him, joining the cartel isn't really a choice at all. It's the only thing standing between his family and starvation. That desperation, that's the bedrock of the cartel's power. But here's the thing. The crop that Manuel used to grow, well, it's pretty much obsolete now. The cartel has made a huge pivot, engineering a product that is infinitely more profitable and, yeah, infinitely more dangerous. This is the story of the big shift from the field to fentanyl. So let's break this down. The business used to be, literally rooted in the earth. You had opium from poppy plants, what Manuel calls a natural drug. Now, it's all cooked up in a lab. We're talking synthetic fentanyl, a chemical he calls a bad drug. And this change wasn't the farmer's idea. It was a pure business decision, driven by insane demand and the promise of just astronomical profits. And what does that mean in actual dollars? For a guy like Manuel, it's completely life-changing. $20,000 a month. That's what he can make producing a fentanyl opium mix. And like he says himself, not even a doctor makes that kind of money where he's from. It's an economic gravity that's just almost impossible to pull away from. Okay, so if that's the view from the ground floor, what does it look like from the penthouse? The cartel's leadership, they don't see this as a drug trade. They see it as a ruthlessly efficient, high-risk, high-reward business. Let's dig into the economics of poison. Listen to this. This is the actual voice of a cartel boss, and his take on it is, well, it's chilling. To him, the millions of fentanyl pills flooding the US are just candy. He feels zero moral responsibility, basically arguing that no one's forcing his customers to buy. His only concern? The bottom line. It is all about the money. And the business model itself is alarmingly straightforward. You take an initial investment, say $10,000, and use it to produce a couple of kilos. You get that one shipment across the border, and bam, you've tripled your money. It's a self-perpetuating, high-return engine that fuels the whole enterprise. And this right here reveals the cartel's core philosophy. Danger isn't a bug in their system, it's a feature. Every single risk, from cops to rival gangs, it's all just factored into the price. In their world, all dangers turn directly into money. The more dangerous the operation, the higher the profit. But of course, an empire built on such high-stakes profit, it needs an iron fist to protect it. The rules of engagement here aren't written in any law books. They're enforced with absolute obedience and overwhelming, brutal force. Inside the cartel, there's just no room for debate. According to the boss, when an order is given, even an order to kill someone, you obey. Instantly. There's no time to think. If you hesitate, you get a warning, but that's it. There is no third chance. It's a system designed to completely eliminate conscience. And this code of obedience, it's backed by an arsenal that would make some small armies jealous. I mean, we're talking about weapons that law enforcement doesn't even have access to, like rifles that can fire 90 rounds in under a minute. This isn't just for defense, it's a raw projection of power, making sure everyone, the state, their rivals, knows exactly who's in control. And if you want to see that power in action, look no further than the Siege of Culiacán. When the government actually dared to arrest El Chapo's son, the cartel didn't just fight back. They literally went to war with the state. They laid siege to the entire city until the government was forced to surrender, releasing him to, and these are their words, protect the lives of people. The cartel won. But for the cartel, just winning wasn't enough. They needed to send a message. A few days after the siege, they tracked down one of the police officers involved in the arrest. They found him in a parking lot. He was hit with almost 150 bullets, all fired in just 6 seconds. It was a public execution, a terrifying, crystal-clear warning to anyone who would ever dare to stand in their way. This level of violence, it creates a very strange relationship with death. For the Sinaloa Cartel, even in the grave, power and status have to be on full display. Welcome to the kingdom of the dead. So get this, in the Pantheon of Narcos, which is a private cemetery for the cartel's elite, a single tomb can cost $500,000. This isn't a burial, it's a final extravagant statement of wealth and power. And we're not talking about headstones here. These are multi-story mausoleums, built like fortresses with armored windows and surveillance systems, but then furnished like luxury condos, complete with sound systems and air conditioning. They're monuments to a lifestyle of pure excess, designed to last long after that life has been violently cut short. But behind all this grotesque luxury lies a heartbreaking reality. The people being buried in these $500,000 tombs, they're not old men who died peacefully. They are, almost without exception, young men in their early 20s. Their futures completely erased by the very violence that paid for these extravagant graves. And for every cartel member buried in a palace, there are countless innocent victims who just disappear. This is a mother whose son, a man who she says had no enemies, was just taken one day. No explanation, no body, no grave, just a giant void of grief and unanswered questions. This constant violence has created its own morbid economy. An entire industry has sprung up that revolves around death, making sure that the cycle of pain and profit just keeps on going, feeding off the chaos the cartel creates. Meet Santos. His job is a direct product of the cartel's business. He's a funeral seller. When a murder happens, he races to the scene, not to help, but to sell a funeral package to the brand new grieving family. He works on commission. His income depends entirely on the city's body count. And even Santos, a man who literally profits from this violence, sees the terrible, repeating pattern. Watching a victim's family, he hopes their kids can escape the anger that fuels revenge, but he knows it's a chain that always continues. This scene at the city morgue, it just says everything. A woman, desperate to find her husband who's been missing for 5 months, isn't talking to the police, she's talking to Santos, the funeral seller. Because in this city, his network of contacts on the street is often more reliable than the official authorities. The state has basically been replaced by the infrastructure of death.
And all this, it leaves us with one final, haunting question. When violence becomes a product and death becomes a business, who is left to pay the price? Because it's not the men in their luxury tombs. It's paid by generations of families trapped in a cycle of grief and revenge. And as long as there is a market for the product, that cycle shows absolutely no sign of ending.